Hello, everyone, and good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you are, and welcome back. We've got another author interview here today in the Success Book Club. And today with me is Mr. Robin Waite. He's the author of this book, Take Your Shot. It's a fantastic little book. Robin is a best-selling author of another book called The Online Business Startup. So first of all, Robin, I'd just love to welcome you to the book club. Welcome.
Thank you, Richard. Pleasure to be here. Looking forward to the interview.
Great to have you. And just really, really quickly for the viewers, we'll obviously talk a lot more about your bio and what you've done and things, Robin, but just for the viewers, Robin is a business coach and he helps small businesses basically, as it says on the tin on the book, how to grow businesses, attract more clients, and to make more money. So what business doesn't want to do that? So Robin, let's just start off. Let's talk about the book first, and then we'll talk a bit more about you. So tell us about the book. How did it come about? And Take Your Shot. What does that really mean?
Well, that book actually, funny enough, was a bit of an accident. So years ago, I used to run an agency, and towards the end of my agency days, I actually put on a webinar which was designed for other sort of service client business owners, like freelancers basically, and web designers. And this guy showed up on it, and he's very enthusiastic on this webinar, and I asked him lots of questions, and then it dawned on me, I was like, he's a golf pro. What's he doing on my webinar? Anyway, we ended up having a really great conversation. He became one of my first coaching clients. The transformation that we went through ended up becoming the initial sort of framework, which I now use for Fearless Business, the coaching program. But it was very, very incidental. I think we had about 30 people on the webinar, and he just stood out like a black sheep. But actually, funny enough, we got on the best out of all of the people who were there. And essentially the book is it was quite interesting because there was a number of decisions as to why I wrote Take Your Shot and in the way that I did, and you've read it, so it's told in like by virtue of a parable. It's a story, and it's quite short in book terms, business book terms, because it's only 100 pages long. And I was very commercial. I wanted a book that literally you could pick up and take on an airplane and read it on a short haul flight and come out of it filled with like 4 or 5 actionable steps that you could take in your business straight away, with a view to, like you said, attracting the right sorts of clients into your business, or more of the right sorts of clients, and making more money, because who doesn't want to make more money in their business, as you say?
Yeah, for sure. No, I think it's great because like for people watching, like it's a story. So it's not like your conventional business book. So that's the first thing I took from it. I thought, wow, this is great. So we meet the guy Russ. It's obviously a fictional name. And this guy's he's just gone through the motions. So could you briefly just describe like what happened? Like what happens in the book, just briefly, the storyline?
Yeah, so well, actually, the real name of the character he's another Richard, actually, and he ran a local pro shop here near me in Gloucester. And essentially, what was happening was he was I don't want to give away too many spoiler alerts in case people want to read it, but you'll still be able to find something in the book, I'm sure. But essentially, he was very unhappy with his life, with his business. He'd had ambitions to go and play on the pro tour and things like that, but through injury and various other reasons, he just reached a point where it just wasn't going to happen. But was still loved the game and wanted to make something out of it in terms of being able to help other people. But the reality was, if it rained on a Saturday afternoon, anything up to 6 out of 8 of his clients just wouldn't show up for their lessons. And as a result of that, obviously he wasn't making the money because he was collecting cash at the end of the lesson, and it had all these knock-on impacts that was then affecting, his relationship with his wife and his kids and various other things like that. So one of the first things that we sort of started to tackle on Russ's journey, I'll stick with the name we've used in the book so it's consistent, but on Russ's journey was that he was asking the wrong sorts of questions when people came in for lessons. So he was asking questions like, how long have you played golf for? What clubs do you play with? When can you start lessons? And then taking questions like, how much did it cost for a lesson and things like that. But we realized there was no real big promise. There was no, he was kind of just going through the motions and doing what every other golf pro does, and they're trying to sell lessons. But then one day this guy comes in who has been given a new role at a new company in sales. And his first task was to go out and play in a 4-ball with the CEO of the company. It's a 2,500 person company. Yeah. So the guy says, all I want to do is drive the ball 30 yards further than the CO and more accurately than him, so he notices me off the first tee. And that became the kind of concept behind the productization process that we now use in Fearless Business, in terms of like starting to work out, like, well, we came up with 5 products around driving further, driving more accurately, the short game, lowering your handicap, lowering your putting average. And then the other thing was as well around sort of hourly rates. So many golf pros kind of charge for a 30-minute lesson or a 60-minute lesson, and it's a fixed rate, and the client kind of chooses when they want lessons and how many they want to do. And quite often they'll just come in and drift away after like 4, 5, 6 lessons, and there's no real kind of like relationship built there. So when we got very outcomes focused with his products, with those 5 products, he was able to work out that it's always generalizations, but on average, it would take 8 weeks to generate one of those 5 outcomes. So now he's got 5 products. They're all 8-week programs. They would focus solely on that one element of the game. And by the end of it, the client would get a clear and specific result. And at that point, we then came to the real crunch of it, where we're talking about sort of pricing. And this is something which he was really fearful about, was putting his prices up and being more expensive than the other golf pros out there. This was a real light bulb moment for me when we were discussing this, during our coaching sessions. And this is why I made it such a big feature in the book as well. Like pricing, we realized, was quite ethereal. When people get focused on the outcomes and results, like it doesn't actually matter about how many lessons they have. Mm-hmm. If you could do it in one lesson and drive 30 yards further, great, like job done. But why shouldn't that be a few £100s, not 50 quid an hour? Yeah. And so that's the philosophy we kind of went through with the book. And absolutely. Immediately it transformed his business, because he was charging more for, his existing clients, and had a really clear focus on the products. Clients had to show up come hell or high water. And then, by page 74, I should probably add, it starts to go into a bit of artistic license in the book, where we hadn't quite got to the point of what Russ's personal goals were with his life. So he wanted to do public speaking. He wanted his own academy where he taught other golf pros his methodologies and various things like that. So it kind of goes in through this whole journey of a business owner, from like struggle and frustration, not making enough money, right the way through to seeing out your goals.
Yeah. And I find it was fascinating. It's really, really good. And in terms of, there's one phrase in it that really sticks out in my mind that I'd never heard before. And after this, we'll talk more about your background, but that term is pixie dust. Tell us about the term pixie dust. And
the pixie dust moments are actually, the technical term is the second and third order consequences of making decisions. So right. when most people make decisions, they can only see one step ahead. So they can only predict a couple of things that might go wrong, or they can maybe predict a couple of things that hopefully will go right. And so for me, as a coach, it's very hard to predict the pixie dust moments, the second and third order consequences. And this is where each decision and then consequence has another consequence and another consequence. Yeah. And what was really,
in layman's terms, kind of repeat business. So the person coming back, spending again and again.
Yeah, exactly. And so we kind of saw it as, because I didn't know much about golf at that particular point in time. I wasn't a player myself. I didn't really understand the game or what it took to run a pro business. I understood business. That was it. So we kind of looked at, well, how long did clients stay with him generally, and how could we get them sort of tied in for that 8-week period? And then clients started coming back. They were like, well, I've done the 30 yards further course, so can we now do the lower your handicap course?
Perfect. Yeah.
And over the course of a year, we'd have clients come back and do all 5 courses, which was just remarkable. Not all of them, but many of them would come back and do repeat courses.
Yeah, brilliant. And it doesn't take a genius in business to figure out that is the way to run a business. I mean, it's very limited what you can do running a 1-hour lesson every so often. So yeah, really, really interesting story. I'm sure a lot of people, particularly, coaching business, services business, what particular business would you just say that the book is particularly aimed at?
Yeah, the book, I mean, it's about a golf pro, and I have had a couple of people who've kind of said, I'm not interested in golf, but actually it's not about the golf pro at all. It's about the process. Mm-hmm. So the book's actually aimed at any kind of service-based business that's charging time for money currently. So typically sort of coaches, consultants, freelancers, where they've been told to go out, and sell their wares for £50 an hour. invariably, when they go through our process, they end up charging 2, 3, 4. We've even had somebody who's 10x their price. Again, that's rare, at the very rare end of the spectrum. But most businesses we work with double or triple their prices within the space of about 2 to 3 months.
Brilliant. Wow. Brilliant. Fantastic. So yeah, that's the book. Definitely really, really good. Really, really enjoyed it. So I definitely encourage people to go and read it, obviously, particularly those people in business. But for me also, the life, even to read it from a life point of view, I mean, everybody can identify with Russ, I believe, whenever he's waking up at like 5 a.m. and it's raining outside, and just the kind of drudgery of life. So I suppose that leads us nicely into your background, because there's a bit in the book about your background which really jumped out at me. And that was the bit about the train moment, the bit where you were going down the hill on your bike and the next minute you were by a train. So could you just give us a little bit of your, or a lot of your background if you choose, and tell us how did it lead up to that moment and what was that moment?
So yeah, so it was a good segue from the book, obviously, into that sort of personal story. But obviously, the book, a lot of the personal, the emotional parts of it are actually personal to me. It's difficult to necessarily draw that out of Russ, who was the subject of the book. But yeah, and the book actually I wrote just after my second daughter was born. So, but it very nearly didn't get to that point. So I actually. What you've asked me about there was quite a kind of a turning point in my life. And every Sunday I basically go out cycling with my local club, my buddies. And this particular Sunday was about 3 weeks before my second daughter was born, and we had planned cesareans with both of them. So I knew when the date was going to be. Yeah. And this particular morning I went down this local categorized climb, and I hit 52.5 miles an hour on my push bike with my buddies. I love going down the hills, hate going up them. And anyway, at the bottom of the hill, just essentially broke down, and didn't really fully understand why, but I sent my cycling buddies back to the cafe and said, I'll catch up with you later. And anyway, ended up next to a railway line, and it wasn't really planned. I didn't have any kind of intentions as such, but for me, it was a quiet place where I wanted to go and contemplate things. And I did, the thoughts were going through my mind, and in the moment, a train went sort of rushing past, and I kind of had that split second where you think, God, what if I was in front of that? And all the stress and everything that had happened in my old business, or the business I was running at the time, we'd grown it to about $250,000 turnover. We had 120 bosses basically in our clients. I had a slightly dysfunctional team of 4, but I wasn't fulfilling. And so train goes past, and I think, well, I'm not going to jump in front of it. So what am I going to do? And essentially all it came down to is I just realized I wanted to spend less time in the business and more time with the family, and do something which kind of filled me up. So I subsequently went home, and my wife now is 8 months pregnant, big bump. And I say, darling, I'm going to close the agency down. So you can imagine the reaction I got, international sign of distress went up. But the reality was, it was just a decision I had to make. I just wasn't fulfilled with it. And I'd had this kind of, through writing the first book, actually, I'd started to get invited to do a lot more speaking and coaching with people, or mentoring more so than coaching. And this thing came up with Russ, and he became my first coaching client through this period. And when I went and spoke to my coach, he was like, well, I actually think it sounds to me like you make a really great coach, Robin. You've got the story to tell, you've got experience, you've got a successful business, all of these things to draw on. So I closed down the agency, and I had some passive income which came in through that anyway. So that was quite handy. And then spent 3 months, enjoyed my paternity leave, welcomed my daughter into the world, and designed my entire coaching program in that time and launched it.
Brilliant. And can I ask, I'm just curious about the actual bike. Do you feel that it was the speed that maybe released emotion in your body, or did you figure out kind of what happened that morning?
Well, at the bottom of the hill there, and it's about a 3 kilometer hill, but at the bottom of this hill, there's 2 little lumps in the road, and I've been down it at 40, 45, 46, 47, 48. Yeah. You wouldn't notice these 2 little bumps in the road until you go over 50 miles an hour. And when I went over them, I aired the second one, and it was a proper moment.
Yeah, sure. So
but I was going so fast, momentum just kept on going, didn't puncture, just, you know, it was all fine. But I think it was just that it wasn't just an unloading of kind of the emotional build-up of everything that had come before it.
Yeah, I see. And tell us about one subject I'm really curious about, and I think a lot of people who have dreams to maybe do something different, is obviously the subject of fear. So how did you deal with that? You know, you had a daughter, you had another daughter on the way, and it was obviously a little bit scary, was it not, to shut down your business? That was...
It was, but what was behind me was more scary. I didn't want to go back to that. Sure. So I had to keep on moving forward. So it's kind of like, for me, it was the scale of fear, like back here was like a 10. I didn't want to go there. I was only a little bit afraid of what was in front of me. So it was an easy decision in that respect. But I needed both the push and the pull in order to go through that.
I get it. And a lot of people will, you know, it's all, mental health is obviously a big thing that we're talking about these days. I certainly identify with that part of the story, without a doubt, is particularly the standing in front of a train. And it all comes down to choice, doesn't it? It's like we're handed this massive choice, like, what do I do now? And, you know, if we rule out the obvious, the most tragic choice, then we're left with, like, where am I going to turn to? So I think what you mentioned there was really interesting about you actually talk to your own coach as well. So let's talk a little bit about coaching in general. Because a lot of people would think of like maybe a football coach or a golf coach, or, you know, sport comes into mind. But tell us a bit about business coaching. So if somebody's watching this and they do have a small business and maybe they are struggling a wee bit, but they're thinking, how can coaching benefit me? How does coaching benefit businesses in general?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of confusion quite often between what is a coach or a mentor or a consultant, or the different sort of names that we attach to stuff. I mean, my route is much more of a mentoring sort of approach. So I've been in business for long enough, so sometimes I find myself just telling people what to do. But a coach is, from my perspective, the big difference is that a coach is able to ask the right sorts of questions that starts to get people to change their belief systems and start to overcome elements of self-doubt, where they can see effectively, they can help themselves to see the different options that are available to them. A coach isn't there really to kind of necessarily to kind of beast you and make you do stuff you don't want to do. You know, a coach is there to help you understand a better path, and to help you find the kind of the path of least resistance that's going to get you to your goals. And there, like I said, my coaching kind of borders much more into mentoring. Sometimes I tell people what they need to be doing, so to give them that structure and that framework. Sometimes you have to come at it from the other way to understand what it is that they want to get out of it. And if you think about anybody who is operating at the top of their game, so sports, business, entrepreneurship, investing, you name it, it doesn't matter. You can always see that there is they may not call themselves a business coach or a coach or a mentor or whatever, but everybody always has somebody who they go and speak to for advice and help. Whether it be, you know, I mean, I've had coaches over the last sort of 6 or 7 years. I'm on mentoring programs. I'm on masterminds. My best coach is a mate of mine who I played five-a-side football with for years, and we go and have a pint in the pub and we enjoy talking about business. We talk about a lot of other stuff, but we talk about each other's businesses and give each other advice. No money changes hands, but to get that other perspective that, you know, otherwise you wouldn't see.
Perspective is a fantastic word. That sums a lot of it up, because even what I see from your story in that moment of meeting with your coach, you had to have a change of perspective, and thank goodness you did, for everybody in the world, and especially your wife and your kids. You know, so perspective is an amazing word, isn't it, in that regard?
100%. I mean, my coach at the time was just like, can I swear? Am I allowed to swear on this show?
Of course.
He basically said, well, fuck the agency, just do what you want to do. And I needed to hear that. That was a bit of about, I was thinking it anyway. I just needed to hear it from somebody else, and maybe get permission from somebody else that actually that could potentially work. And, you know, I don't know whether I may have would I've come to a different conclusion if I'd not had a coach at the time. Who knows? But certainly in that moment, it gave me a very clear sense of direction.
Yeah, for sure. And there's a topic that I'm really interesting, and I think hinges on a lot of success. Is, you know my story. Most of the people watching this will my story of kind of having a bit of success, let's say, and then it all kind of disappearing, and sort of left wondering, what the frig happened, and as we've met on Clubhouse. Just for people watching, we were having a great conversation in a room yesterday around the subject of money mindset. I think this is a fascinating subject. How a lot of our financial kind of success and things is dictated by our mindset. So let's talk about that. Tell us a little bit about your take on that.
Yeah, I'm by the way, I'm not a psychologist, so I can't give you the sort of technical aspects. I'm just a very enthusiastic about money and the way people think, especially around business. But Money Blueprint is designed or installed in us between the ages of about 3 and 7. And so, I've got 7 and 4-year-old daughters now, and they can count. My eldest one can probably add up and do a few basic sums, but they have no real idea about what a fair value exchange is. And actually, when I speak to most people, especially business owners in entrepreneurship, where it's amazing how often you hear the repeated story. We came from nothing. We grew up on a housing estate. We had to fight for everything, et cetera, et cetera. 99% of people aren't born into wealth or with a silver spoon in their mouth or anything like that. What they will have heard is stuff like money is the root of all evil. Money doesn't grow on trees. Or no, you can't have those trainers. They're too expensive. No, we can't go on the holiday this year because we can't afford it. Let's go for the cheaper option. We were brought up on that. Yep. And our parents, whilst they're trying to do the best by us and protect us by, because money is evil, actually what they didn't realize is the amount of damage which they were doing, because what it does is it creates this scarcity mindset, which we end up living by. And actually, as grown-ups, especially business owners, it just doesn't serve us, because business is without being too crass, it's about making money. It's about making profit. Okay, you can do that with a sense of purpose and vision and values and everything else, all the good stuff. But ultimately, if your business isn't making money, it's just a hobby, or it's a not-for-profit. But you have to be realistic about that. Businesses need to make money, and so when somebody says to you, if you're trying to sell a product and somebody says how much and you find yourself retreating, that's your value system coming out. That's where the fear kicks in, and like, I couldn't possibly give them my price. And isn't it funny, right? Have you noticed, like in transactions, the person buying stuff hates asking how much. The person selling something hates the person asking how much. Nobody wants to have that awkward question.
It's weird, isn't it?
Yeah. And then the moment somebody says, "Oh gosh, that's a bit expensive," we all take it personally. But money is this really ethereal thing, right? It doesn't really it's a concept. It doesn't really exist in any way, but yet we have such a great attachment to it. And most people spend their entire lives searching for abundance and wealth and everything like that. The reason they can't find it is because nobody's ever taught them about the basics of like wealth creation. And by the way, I'm not loaded. I'm not rolling in money, but we have a pretty nice life, me and my family, and nice house with a good view, and we don't necessarily want for anything. So but I'm not a multi-millionaire or any of that, like the Clubhouse clowns I call them, the people on Clubhouse touting 8, 9, 10, 20 figure businesses and all that sort of stuff. Good for them. But for us sort of more humble human beings, I do when we used to be able to do talks live, I do this experiment. I have a £5 note and I get it out and I say, go around the table, let's buy something off the person next to you for a £5, whether it be your phone, and it's a bit of a game, your phone, your glasses, your coat, your purse, or whatever, go around it. Then what I do is take the £5 back and I say, now do it with this, and I get a £50 note out. And the amount of times I've done this talk, and you get audible reactions. Ooh!
Yeah, different story.
And I wish I'd got it now, but if you because I probably shouldn't tell people this in public. I carry 50s around in my wallet just because it makes me feel good, and I'm not ashamed to admit that. Yeah. If ever I feel scarcity creeping into my life, I'll get out my £50 note and I'll look at it and I'll go, I deserve this. It's abundance. This is a good thing. Right. So I have a positive connections with it. But the reality is they're just 2 bits of paper with numbers and things like that written on it. Why do people? And I've even had somebody, when I do that game, put it in their pocket and try and walk out with it. like literally in the middle of and everybody out there, they're trying to be funny and stuff. But I've had people, they'll try and give the £50 note to the other person. They'll just hang on to it. Right. And it's just paper with bits and numbers on it. And it's because we've created this emotional attachment to high value things. And I think when you start to unpick that, and especially I talk a lot about, I'm a business coach. So, in the business world, when somebody says how much, you should be proud to say what your prices are because of the value which you bring into the world. Totally. And the person who is asking how much, even if it is too expensive, should be respectful of the fact that that person charges that much. And the amount of times, like, it pains me when I see business owners getting harassed because they're, somebody else thinks their prices are too high, and they're just money grabbing and penny pinching and all those things. And it's like, no, if that person's worth that much, they're worth that much, and that should be fine, and we should be respectful about it.
Yeah, totally. Love it. I could talk about that all day. That's an absolutely fascinating subject for sure. So yeah, in terms of, pricing in general, what would be your number? Let's say somebody's watching this and they've just had a bit of a light bulb. They're like, I need to be charging more money. What would be your number one tip for people around pricing?
Well, the first thing is just to acknowledge that and sit with it. Yeah, I need to be charging more money. We have like a framework which we take people through. So if they're in that sort of charging time for money sort of base, and they might be thinking, well, I'm charging £50 an hour. I'd like to charge £60 an hour. No, first of all, you've got to look at how do you package it up. So if it's harder with certain products. But with service-based businesses, we can give you some clear examples. So first thing is you've got to, one, acknowledge you need to increase your prices. Two, we move into the productization process. So a couple of simple questions around, and I always have to do bunny ears with this. On average, because everybody always goes, oh, but sometimes it doesn't work like that. No, on average, how long does it take for you to create a transformation with your client? Okay. Yeah. And if that's 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 12 weeks, 6 months, doesn't matter. But let's find out on average, how long does it take to create that transformation? And take the coaching space, for example, which is something which I know well now. Let's say you have a 6-month program where you would normally charge £100 a session and you meet with your client monthly. Well, that package is £600. So you have to get used to, this is step 2, you have to get comfortable and used to selling a £600 program, coaching program. And most people, when they look at it, they go, oh gosh, am I only charging £600 for 6 months worth of coaching? Gosh, that feels cheap. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, exactly. Great. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So then I challenge them. I say, step number 3, we challenge them. Could you double that price? And most people, oh no, couldn't possibly double that price. Okay. But now what we've got is a bandwidth somewhere between £600 and £1,200. We've got to work out where we sit on that bandwidth. So step number 4, we then go through something like a Dutch auction, basically. So I start at £600 and we gradually increment it. And when you get that gut reaction, it's too expensive, that's the point where I know that I've just put you outside your comfort zone. And that's the price point we're gonna stick at. So I do 700, 800, 900 pounds. Right. Okay. So the next 10, this is the next, step number 5, the next 10 people who come into our world, who want some coaching or a website designed or whatever it might be, we're going to sell them that same program, but for £900 now. And invariably what happens is that somewhere between 1 in 3 and 1 in 5 of those people are going to say yes. So 2, 3 or 4 people are going to say yes. And then they get it.
Yeah. They're like the penny drops.
Yeah. Until you've sold something for more money than you sold it at yesterday, you're not going to actually understand what it feels like to charge more for the same product. You have to go out and ask for more money. And this is a thing that most people are afraid of because they fear rejection. The one thing they're afraid of is hearing the word no, because they're emotionally attached to that decision. They think it's a personal attack on them.
It's not, yeah.
Whereas actually it's not. It's just business. And so what tends to happen is they go out and it might be the first person, it might be the 9th person who says yes at £900. And it's great. I've worked with hundreds of businesses on this process now. It's very simple, and anybody watching this can go away and try this in their business. The most common comment I get after that is, oh my gosh, Robin, I can't believe how easy that was. Yeah. I can't believe I worried so much about that. Oh, by the way, I've already put my prices up to 1,200.
Wow. Yeah. So they've gone to the 900 and they thought, sort it.
Yeah. Because they've got it. They've sold it for more. Mm-hmm. They've understood they've learned the principles. They've actually learned it, and away they go. Now we're off at the races. And that process, you can actually iterate on it about every 4 to 6 weeks. So for me and my business, I probably shouldn't say this again in public, but I've done 7 price increases in the last 12 months.
Right. Wow.
Because you can. Most people wait, like they do a price increase once a year because it's safe and it's like 10%, and you know, there's not much riding on it. There's no real kind of like risk there. I'm like, no, go out and pitch to 10 people. As soon as you get like 3, 4, 5 yeses, shift it up a gear, put it up. Even if it's up by £100, put it up.
Brilliant. Love it. Love it. Robin, that is, I mean, there's such gold in that for people. So this is really definitely inspired me to make sure that this video, this interview is watched by as many small business people as possible. So thank you so much for that. And I'm really conscious your time is really tight. You're obviously very busy in your business, what you do. So, but before we go, just tell us, let's say somebody is inspired and they're like, wow, there's some gold in that. I want to know more, other than obviously going to Amazon and buying the book and your other books. Where else can they find you, and what do you actually do for people, let's say?
Yeah, absolutely. So we essentially, through Fearless Business, we take people through that productization and pricing process. We give people the ability to articulate their value better, and to confidently sell their product or service for double, treble what they were selling it for yesterday. Basically, you can Google me. So Robin Waite, remember to put the E on the end, because there's another guy who's a Kitsap soccer coach in like Canada or something without the E. So yeah, Google Robin Waite, but connect with me on LinkedIn. Check out the website, which is fearless.biz. There's a few free resources on there as well. And then also DM me on Instagram as well. So just search for Robin Waite. You'll be able to find me on there.
Brilliant. And for wherever you're watching this, if it's YouTube or wherever, you'll see links around. If it's Facebook, there'll be links all over the place to find Robin as well. So without further ado, Robin, I just want to thank you so much from everybody, all the viewers' point of view as well. That was really, really good. Thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of your day.
That's my pleasure, Richard. You too. Thank you.
Cheers. We'll chat soon. Bye.
Bye.